So, good evening, everyone. Just one or two people can unmute their mics and just tell me if I'm audible.
Yes, you're audible.
Thank you. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another job mentorship session. It's good to see you guys here. So, today we're talking about threat modeling, and we'll go into what exactly threat modeling entails, how it affects us as people in the security field, either you in cloud and network security, or the person learning to be a security analyst, those trying to go into governance, basically how it plays a role in our lives as cybersecurity professionals. And then we'll also get insight of its importance and really understanding what threat modeling entails. So today we've been joined by Tracy Magoma. I'll give a brief introduction. So Tracy is currently a senior officer, cybersecurity assurance at Safaricom. Before that, she was at EY. She is a skilled cybersecurity specialist in various information security domains, including offensive security, data protection and privacy, IT regulatory audits and compliance, and vendor and third-party risk assessment. So she'll take us through threat modeling, and maybe when we have time, she can also give us a brief on her career and how she ended up in Safaricom doing what she does. So I'll take this moment to welcome Tracy. Hello.
I hope, confirm you can hear me.
Yes, I can. So karibu sana to Cyber Shujaa job mentorship session. These are people in the current cohort or alumni or anyone else who has the link. So mostly it's the people here are trying to either transition into cybersecurity or scale up in their cybersecurity careers. So karibu sana Tracy.
Thank you so much, Hope. So I'll just begin. I'd like to welcome everyone for making time to join this session. And I feel like I have the right audience, considering where you are at your careers. I hope you'll learn a lot from the session. My name is Tracy Magoma, as Hope mentioned, and I'll take us through threat modeling. So let me share my screen. Feel free to ask any questions. You can raise your hand, and Hope can let me know if there's anything I can attend to. Confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes, I can from my end.
Yes. Yep. Okay. So, who am I? I think a comprehensive introduction has been done with regards to what I do. I currently work at Safaricom as a senior officer, cybersecurity assurance. And basically what my team majorly does, we work closely with the various project teams, with the developers, getting to do security reviews on what they're working on to ensure that any gaps or vulnerabilities are fixed before these products are released or deployed for our customers to use. We also do a lot of pen testing. We do tasks around DevSecOps and data protection and privacy as well. We do a bit of that. Outside work, I do a lot of volunteers around the tech communities. I currently volunteer with the ISACA Kenya chapter in the Special Programs Committee. I've worked with them in the Membership and Communications Committee as well. In the Special Programs Committee, we tend to do reach out to various higher learning institutions and get to mentor students who are interested in tech, cybersecurity being one of the key topics we focus on. I also take up volunteer roles at SheHacks whenever they come up. I do play CTFs once in a while. And when I'm not working or studying, I love taking time off the screen. So I love nature, walking around, doing mini hikes. I also love trying out new recipes on Friday evenings, and I love books. I love reading history books and autobiographies of people I look up to. So I think that is pretty much me. And what are we gonna cover today? 6 key items. We'll start by understanding what a threat is, a vulnerability, and a risk. We're gonna look at a high level of the software development lifecycle, get to see where exactly does threat modeling fall. We're gonna dive deep into threat modeling, understand what it is, why is it important, who needs to do this, and then the approach to tech when doing threat modeling, that is the threat modeling process. We're going to cover the threat modeling methodologies. There are about 6, but I will do 1 for this session, and then you can do the other 5 as homework. And then lastly, we'll close the session with a sample threat model. So what is a threat? So it is anything that has potential to cause harm to an asset here being something valuable, that is data, systems, or people. Yeah, so anything bad that can happen, that is what we call a threat. And then vulnerability is a weakness or a flaw in a system, and this could be exploited by the threat to cause harm to a system. And then a risk is the likelihood or possibility that that identified threat will exploit the weakness, that is the vulnerability, and this leads to negative consequences. So I can try to break this down using a borrowed house analogy. So let's take an example. I'm thinking of a random city, Cape Town. Let's say you're living in Cape Town, in one of the estates in Cape Town. And then in your hood, there is normally a guy in a red hood as well, walking around, and he's known for breaking into people's houses. So this guy is a threat, okay? And then for you in your house, you decide to leave your windows open, you decide to leave your key under the mat, or you decide to forget to lock your door. So that means your house is vulnerable. It will be easy for this guy to break into the house. So because of this vulnerability, then it poses a high risk. That means there's a high chance or a high likelihood that your house will be invaded by this particular guy who's our threat. I hope this now breaks down and you clearly understand the difference between a threat, vulnerability, and a risk. So another thing I wanted us to cover is the software development lifecycle. You could be wondering, this is a cybersecurity session, why we're doing the software development. This is because threat modeling really is key in one of the phases. So let's go through the 6 phases first of the software development lifecycle. The first phase is the requirements gathering and analysis phase. This is where the project team or the product owner gets to have a session with the customers, get to understand their requirements before they go ahead to develop a solution for maybe a problem they have identified. And then the second phase is the system design. This is where now the system architects do come in to design the end-to-end of how this system would work and the various components identified. So this is where threat modeling comes in. So we do threat modeling at phase 2 of the software development lifecycle, that is the system design phase. We will delve deep into that in the more slides to come. So the phase 3 is the implementation. This is where now the coding happens, the development. And then after that, there's the testing phase to test whether the developed features are working as expected. And then we have deployment, where now the product is released to the customers for use and maintenance. And yeah. So what is threat modeling? So it is a systematic approach of identifying, prioritizing, and addressing potential security threats and vulnerabilities to a system. So in threat modeling, you get to identify any potential threats that could manifest on the various components of your system. You get to analyze these identified threats and give a risk rating depending on the impact and the likelihood. And then you get to, with that now you can do your prioritizing. And then lastly, you get to give recommendations of the mitigating controls that could be implemented so that these threats are not exploited. And then why is it important to have a threat model? We have mentioned that with threat modeling, you get to understand the threats and vulnerabilities. So you get to know what you're protecting yourself against, and you get to identify the mitigating controls that you need to look into as you do your development. And threat modeling to me is a proactive approach when it comes to cybersecurity, because you're not waiting for an attack to happen so that you get to implement security controls. You are doing it even way before, like you're having it at the earliest stages of the SDLC, as we discussed earlier. So it is it aids with early threat identification, and you're able to develop proactive security measures. Again, it's an integral part of the secure SDLC. We saw it falls under phase 2, that is the design phase of the software development lifecycle. And with this is what we get to refer to shifting security left. It's part of that because you get to identify these threats, or rather you get to have security in mind as early as possible in your development process. And also, I think one more thing I could mention here is with threat modeling, you could identify design flaws because threat modeling, you get to review the design of that particular system that you're working on. So from that, you could tell, are there any assets that have been publicly exposed, yet they shouldn't be? So such design flaws could be identified during the threat modeling phase. And now, who should build a threat model? So a project is normally made up of different stakeholders, starting with the product owners, with the software developers, the architects. So you as the cybersecurity resource person in that team, it's definitely expected that you're the one who will carry the mantle of doing the threat model. But remember, this should not be done as a one-man thing. Ensure you engage your project team to get insights from them. Ensure you get feedback from the product owner, especially when it comes to if whatever controls you're recommending, what impact will they have to the end user. So ensure you engage all the stakeholders. And when should this threat model be created? We've covered this, the design stage of the project. So you have done your threat model. Where do you keep this? And do you throw it away after you're done? No. So as a cybersecurity person, I could speak from my current role. When working on a project, there's quite a lot of documentation you come across. You get to do even security reports. So you keep that in a central location with regards to any relevant project documentation. So that's where you could put your threat model as well. And remember that a threat model is not a one-time thing. You need to always be updating it in case there are any changes in the architecture. And then again, with the agile way of working, you normally get changes to your product quite often with regards to customer feedback. So ensure you check if these changes are affecting the architecture in any way. Are there any new components being introduced? What new threats could manifest in that? And then you update your threat model in line with that. So we could go into the threat modeling process. These will basically give you an approach that you could take when doing a threat model. It's basically what I do. So number one is asset identification. How do you get to identify the assets for your threat model? So remember, in the design phase of the software development lifecycle, the system architect is expected to do the design for that particular project. So you could request them to share with you the high-level design or the data flow diagrams so that you get to understand end-to-end information flow of how that system is going to work, what components are going to be involved. So that is how you get to identify the assets, and then you get to identify exactly what they will be doing. Is there any information that they will be handling, customer data, financial information, etc. So once you have identified the assets, you go ahead now to identify the threats in each of the assets, because each are different. Let's say you have an application where the customers interact with it using a web application or a mobile app, and then you have APIs that are used to make calls to the backend. So you get to identify what could go wrong on the front end, what could go wrong on these APIs, what could go wrong in backend. Okay. So you identify threats on each of the assets, and then after that, you go ahead to do an analysis, and now this is where you also do prioritizing. You analyze based on the potential impact and also the existing controls, and this is where you give a risk score. And how do we calculate the risk score? It is a combination of probability and impact. Probability being the likelihood of an event occurring, and then the impact, what harm will be there by this event happening, be it revenue loss. So by understanding the two, then you come up with a risk score, and then you can get to rate that identified threat as a high, as a critical, as a medium, or as a low. Number four, after we have identified the threat, we have analyzed, then it is important to recommend security controls that could be implemented as you do your development. And then lastly, you do validation, and validation here is just confirming that all the threats have been mitigated. Whatever you recommended during the threat modeling earlier phases, has it been implemented? Were there any vulnerabilities during your review? Ensure that they have been addressed. So validation, this one is not only in the design phase, it is quite continuous. It happens in the development phase as well. As the team does its development, you get to review as testing is ongoing and till deployment. Okay, so we can get into the threat modeling methodologies. I mentioned we have 6 common ones, but for this particular presentation, in detail, I'll cover the first one, the threat methodology, and then you can do number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as homework. So the STRIDE methodology, this one was developed by Microsoft, and it acts as a guide for identifying security threats. S standing for spoofing, T is tampering, R reputation, I is information disclosure, D denial of service, and E elevation of privilege. We'll cover it into detail looking at these 6 threats later. The second methodology is the TRIKE methodology. This is the threat and risk identification and knowledge-based engineering. This methodology focuses on using the threat models as a risk management tool. It identifies and prioritizes those potential risks based on their likelihood and impact. Remember, we said a risk is a combination of the likelihood and impact. So it's basically risk focused. And then we have the VAST methodology, visual, agile, and a simple threat. This one is automated, and it is built on the threat modeler platform. You can check out that platform. And something interesting is that it can be integrated into the DevOps lifecycle. And we have the attack trees methodology. It's one of the oldest methodologies in threat modeling. And this one involves representing the threats and their possible paths in a tree structure, such that the threats and the attacker is the root, and then whichever possible path they take is the branches and leaves. CVSS, the Common Vulnerability Scoring System. This one is developed by NIST, and I guess most of us could be quite familiar with it. It's the standardized scoring system used for known vulnerabilities. They work with a scale of 0 to 10. So 0 being none, and then we have anything below 4, 0.1 to 3.9 being a low. Medium is between 0.7, high is between 7 and 9, critical 9 to 10. Yeah, so that's CVSS. You can check it out. It's important when it comes to scoring. And then we have lastly, PASTA. This is the process for attack simulation and threat analysis. It is ideally attacker-centric. It uses the attack scenarios to identify potential threats. Okay. Hi, Daisy. You could probably mute. Thank you. Okay, so we can dive deep into the STRIDE methodology and the 6 threats that could guide. So the first one is spoofing identity. So this is basically impersonation, when you pretend to be something or someone other than yourself. So this is when, let's say, someone sends an email as another user. Linda decides to send an email as Tracy. So as the recipient, you think it's Tracy who sent the email, but here there was some email spoofing. The email was sent by someone else. So this particular threat violates the authentication property. Number 2, we have the tampering. This is a manipulation of data or unauthorized modification of data. And this violates the integrity property because now there is a change in that data. And then we have repudiation. Repudiation is whereby you have the ability to deny that you did something. And this is when there is insufficient logging that could trace back to whatever activity that you did. So it is really important to ensure that you have audit logs in your systems so that you don't fall victim of this. So this threat violates non-repudiation. We have information disclosure. Basically, this is unauthorized access to information. It could be personal identifiable information. It could be financial data, etc. So this one violates the confidentiality property. And then we have denial of service. Denial of service is where there's disruption of the system's availability, and this impacts such that legitimate users are not able to use that particular system. So an attacker could decide to flood a particular web server with so many requests, overwhelming its resources. So whichever users that are trying to access it, they are not able to. So that violates the availability property. And then we have lastly, elevation of privilege. So this is when you'd find a normal user has the ability to do admin tasks, and this violates the authorization property because now here proper validation is not checked whether does this guy have rights to access these admin resources. Yeah, so that's it for the STRIDE methodology. Now we're almost coming to the tail end actually of the presentation. I don't know if there are any questions so far.
A question, Tracy.
Okay.
Just before you move on to this slide, back on the STRIDE.
Yep.
So we say you told us like threat modeling is that systematic approach. So I'm looking at maybe the threats here. Is it like, how do I put it? So if you're for a software developer, the risks or the attack vectors are different from someone maybe in cloud technology and also different from someone who's doing also, information security, where the security is both cyber security and physical security.
Mhm.
So, uh, depending the methodologies you've given us, do they depend on the attack vectors or different areas, or do you pick the one that best relates to you? How does that work?
Yeah, sure. It also depends exactly with the scenarios that you have given. It actually depends on what exactly are you really working on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so with that, you can have a look at the various methodologies and then decide which one really fits your requirements.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we can have a look at the sample threat model. So for this one, I just did a simple design, a 3-tier architecture. We can assume this is an e-commerce application. We have the presentation tier that holds the a front-end bit, that is the web application in this case. We have the application tier that has the web and the application servers. And then we have the database tier that holds the database, and this database stores data that is being used. So from the approach that we discussed earlier, or rather the threat modeling process, I gave 5 key stages that you could follow. The first one was asset identification, and that one you get to review the design and then identify the various components. So I think someone can unmute and give me the key assets they identify from this design. Ignore the colored things and tell me any key assets you identify. Yes, Orem?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Oh, I'm
Yes.
raising a concern. We hadn't seen the visual representation yet, but now we can see.
Okay. You want to give a try on the assets that you could consider from this design?
Yes.
Okay.
The website.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the web. The web is one of them. I saw someone else's hand.
Kimani Kamau.
Yes. Yes, Kimani. And then Charlo can go next.
All right. Thank you. I'd say also the web application, but I would like to add the web app servers and the database.
Yeah, awesome. You almost covered everything. Charlo, anything that you could add?
What a database.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so the user interacts with this system from the web, and then whichever requests that they're sending to the web servers, this is done using the APIs. The web servers process the business logic of this application, and the database stores the customer data, the product data, whatever. So we can start with the threats that could manifest on the front end, that is the web. Number one, okay, I really did only 2 for each, but disclaimer, these are not the only ones. They're quite a number. You can research more about it, but for demo purposes, I just did 2 for each. So the first thread here on the website being use of vulnerable components. So when the developers are coming up with this application, they do incorporate a lot of third-party software components. This could be frameworks, could be libraries, could be plugins, and at times these components could introduce vulnerabilities into that web application. So it's important to ensure that they're not using vulnerable components. And then the other threat could be brute forcing attacks. Let's say your users are using weak passwords, you haven't implemented multi-factor authentication. Now that is on the web end. We can look at the APIs, what could go wrong on the APIs there could be unrestricted resource consumption. This is what others would refer to as lack of rate limiting, whereby you haven't limited the number of requests a particular user will make within a specific time frame. And now with this comes along with denial of service attacks. Like if you don't limit this, it's easy for someone to execute a denial of service attack or even a brute force attack. So the other threat could be excessive or sensitive data in the responses. This is as well on the API. Then on the servers, we have missing patches. This is the various vulnerabilities that could be present on the servers. And then we have the excessive permissions, whereby you could give a normal user root privileges, but ideally they do not need that for their tasks. This could also manifest in the database. It is a similar threat in the database. And then lastly, we could have security misconfigurations on the database. So number one, we identified our assets. Number two, we have identified the threats that could manifest on each of the component. So number three, after doing that, I think someone could give a try on what the third point was, if you can remember. Okay. Yeah, I'm not seeing any hands. So after the two, what you do is analysis and give a risk rating, but we're not going to do that because it varies. You need to take into consideration the likelihood, what impact will this have to your organization? So it varies. We're not going to do that. So we'll proceed to the fourth one, which was mitigation. And mitigation entails giving recommendations in terms of the security controls that your team could implement, even as they do the development. So I have listed the various threats that we have discussed earlier and the mitigation. So we can start with the web. We had the first threat was use of vulnerable components. So what mitigation would you recommend here? So ensure that your team regularly checks for updates and they use the latest versions of the components. For the brute forcing attacks, implement multi-factor authentication, educate your users, and enforce strong password policies. And then on the APIs, we had the unrestricted resource consumption or the OWASP top 10. So here you need to put in a limit of how often a single API client or user can execute a single operation within a defined time frame. And also this one, you need to engage the larger project team because it varies. You need to take into consideration exactly what is the system going to do and how many requests do they anticipate, such things. And then we have the excessive or sensitive data in the responses. Ensure that your API responses only return the data that is necessary. They shouldn't return especially sensitive data like the data around authentication. For instance, you find a response is returning an access token, and with that access token, someone could gain unauthorized access. And then, apologies, for the servers, we had missing patches. So for the missing patches, ensure the patching, the fixes are done in a timely manner. Then excessive permissions, put in mind the principle of least privilege. So that is what you should focus on while granting access to the various users. And lastly, we have the security misconfigurations on the database. So you need to ensure that your database does not have any default accounts. So again, these mitigations are not comprehensive, but for these demo purposes, these are some of the things you could look into. And then for the web and the APIs, you can check out the OWASP Top 10. It provides a comprehensive guide on that. And so I have come to the end of the presentation. Any questions or comments? Yes, Kimani.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation. It was really easy and simple to understand while also covering the technical aspects of threat modeling. I do have a question.
Okay.
how often are you supposed to do threat modeling in an organization? And then say, for example, if organization X has done threat modeling, they've done the impact assessment in terms of the risk being low, medium, or high. How often do you now check to make sure if it's okay? I assume maybe there might be some documentation that would be done after the threat modeling is, done by the relevant department that would do the threat modeling. Yes, so I'd just like to ask, how often do you do it? And then what would be the follow-up process, for an organization like Company X?
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that question, Kimani. So I think I'll first respond to, I think you mentioned something around whoever who did the threat modeling. Ideally, as the cybersecurity team, you should be the custodian of the threat model. And if you find that one was done, you need to keep track is whatever product or whatever system that was done, has there been any change since last, like if the threat model was done, let's say in earlier in the year, and by now there have been changes that have been done on this system. So you need to engage the project team. You need to engage the architect to see were there any changes in the architecture, were there any new components that were introduced. Then you need to identify the new threats and update the threat model. Remember I mentioned that a threat model is not like a one-time thing. You need to do it continuously. You can do it maybe as the organization, you can decide we will be reviewing our threat models after a particular time. But again, if you know your products normally undergo frequent changes and you have that in mind, then again, you need to always be updating your threat model in line with that. So ensure you have actually stored your threat model in a central location where you have the rest of the documentations for that particular project so that it's easy for you to refer and update accordingly. I hope I have answered your question, Kimani.
Yes, you have answered my question. Thank you very much, Tracy.
You're welcome. Hope, is there any other question? Oh, I see Mugi.
Yeah.
Yes, Mugi.
Thank you so much, Tracy, for the presentation. Now, I have a question. So, when you talk about the threats and vulnerabilities and risks, now, can you kindly something about now when it comes to securing the cloud, when it comes now to the cloud itself now. So, what are some of the threats and vulnerabilities and risks we should be aware of? Probably the cloud.
Sorry, you are not so clear, but if I got you correctly, you are asking of the various threats that could manifest in the cloud environment. Yeah, so yeah, you could have a design where you have your application hosted on the cloud. The one I did was just a simple one, assuming that it is on-prem. And as I mentioned, there are various threats depending on the component that you are actually reviewing. So on the cloud, you need to be on the lookout for things like misconfigurations. You need to look out for access management. So those are some of the things that you could look out on the cloud.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions, comments? Okay, before they keep coming. Okay, Moses, you can go ahead.
Hello, hi.
Hi, Moses.
I have a question about threats.
Okay.
I don't know if since you work at Safaricom, is SIM fraud considered a cybersecurity threat?
Sorry, is what? I didn't get that.
SIM fraud. SIM fraud.
Oh, SIM fraud.
Yeah. where we have people call users of registered users and take over their SIM cards and perform transactions.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So what measures have been taken by Safaricom to ensure that they reduce, or the people who commit these offenses are tracked?
Okay.
Yes.
A good question. But I feel like someone from our fraud team would have been ideal to respond because we have a dedicated fraud team. But yes, SIM fraud is really impacting our customers, and this basically happens through the social engineering attacks, where you find a customer is easily manipulated to giving their information willingly but unknowingly. Yeah. So what we do again majorly is education, because for social engineering, here the human has manifested to be the weakest link. So we try to educate our customers. I think you have seen campaigns on social media regarding the same. And also in the technical end, we have systems in place, anti-fraud solutions. I couldn't be, I don't have, I can't speak into details about them at the moment, but yes, we do have systems at Safaricom that help us with the same. But the major thing to curb the social engineering attacks is user education. I saw Axe hand up. Wanted to add something, or you have a question?
Yeah, thank you so much. Again, let me go there to the question. We have covered much of the on-prem queue for that. Now, I have a question. Is there a kind of a specialization for cybersecurity in the cloud? Like, there are specialization for cloud security?
Oh, yes. You could be a cloud security architect. So that's one of the roles that has come into mind. So if you're interested in the cloud, ensure you take certifications around the various cloud platforms that we have. AWS is the most common. You can start with AWS Cloud Practitioner to get the fundamentals, and then later you can do their security specialty course. Then we have, I think, similar courses on the Microsoft Azure as well. But to answer your question, yes, there are careers as cloud security professionals that you could pursue and specialize specifically on that.
So that means with the cloud practitioner certification, like can now advance. Now, which are some of these services, the areas that can make you now certified, based on being already certified?
Sorry, Mugi, I didn't get the last bit. You were breaking.
Sorry for that. Okay, like now being already having a certification in AWS Cloud Practitioner. Now, the best path, the right path for you to be a cloud specialist engineer, for instance, I'm an analyst. Now, which are the best paths to take?
Okay. So if you are specializing on the AWS platform, I mentioned of their AWS certified security specialty certification. So after your practitioner, check out the security specialty certification. It will give you an in-depth understanding of the security controls in the AWS cloud.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So a question here to Tracy.
Okay.
Do you measure the effectiveness of the threat modeling efforts you do? So is there continuous improvement to it? And also, like, I think Safaricom is such a big company. How do you guys stay informed with the latest threats and vulnerabilities? Because things keep on changing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll start with the last question. How do we stay informed with the latest threat? So as a cybersecurity staff, you're expected to be on the lookout for this. But however, we have a dedicated team that does threat hunting. So there's a team that does that. And then remind me of your first question around the threat model again, Hope.
Is there like continuous improvement to it? Because this
Oh,
is
yeah.
something continuously. How do you measure the effectiveness of your threat modeling efforts?
Awesome. Yeah, to measure the effectiveness, remember the fifth stage I gave when you're doing the threat modeling, it was validation. So once you have identified your risks and you've given the team the recommendations or the mitigations that they should consider in the development. So in your validation, as the development is done, you do your security reviews, okay? And the threat model should act as a guide of the checks that you will do. So if you identify that there could be a threat around the vulnerable components on the web. So as you're doing your security checks, when the team does the development of that particular system, ensure to review that there are no vulnerable components. There are no, I think what we covered in the demo, we had brute force. So around passwords, ensure there are strong password policies, ensure there is multi-factor authentication, amongst the other controls. So the validation step is really important. And this one is done on phase 3 of the software development lifecycle onwards till the end. So at the end of it, definitely you need to document in a report of what exactly you checked and was there vulnerability or not? Were the controls implemented? Yes or no? So that way you can keep track.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There was a hand that went up and then went down. I think it was from Trevor.
Oh yeah, Trevor, we saw that.
Apologies on the noisy background. I wanted to ask, so you mentioned about identifying the assets and then you identify the possible threats and then you skip to the part where you analyze. Can you give us like a rough vector of the vectors coming when it involves about analysis?
Oh yeah. So analysis, this is where you get to give a risk score. So again, how do we come about the risk score? You need to check on the likelihood that that event is gonna happen, and also the impact. What impact is it gonna cause to your organization? Are you gonna lose some money? And depending with your organization's revenue, how much of a loss would you consider high, medium, low? So with those two in mind, the likelihood and the impact on a scale of 1 to 5, let's say you give that with this threat, there's a high chance that it's going to happen. So you give it around a 4. And then for the impact, we're going to lose lots of millions of money if this is exploited. Then you give it a 5. So you get a 20, and you also consider a risk rating, the controls that are already in place to ensure that that doesn't happen. So you can use that calculation for the analysis bit. So it varies from organization to organization.
Okay, thank you. And then this one is a bit out of topic. So what does Safaricom look into if someone wants to apply for a job under that category?
Are you interested to join the cybersecurity team?
Yes.
Okay. So I think, Hope, after the session, remind me to share the link to our careers website. But at the moment, we don't have openings in the cybersecurity team. But if there's one, the HR team would post on the website. And then it's pretty simple to apply. Ensure you have an updated CV. I think last week you guys covered a session on CVs. So ensure you have an updated CV and make your application in time. So after that, there is normally a quite comprehensive interview process, like a 4-stage process. So the first one is normally a technical assessment. This could be in a CTF format. So you get to do the CTF, and then shortlisting is done. And then you go to the first oral interview. This will be with your with the senior manager of that team and HR. After that interview, if you get shortlisted, you do another second oral interview with our head of department. And then the last one you do with the chief corporate security officer. So yeah, basically that's how our recruitment works. So I'll share the link with Hope, or rather you can be on the lookout if an opening comes up.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Trevor.
Also a question, because this is a job matching session too.
Okay.
Would you advise on maybe career pages or ways in which the people here can gain entry level jobs or ways to that? Because that's been quite the issue.
Okay. Career pages. I think LinkedIn just came into my mind. Yeah, I hope. Yeah, I hope you all have LinkedIn profiles. Ensure you put yourself out there. What are you skilled in? Are you good in pen testing? Put it there. Are you good in incident response? Put it there. Have you done some internship somewhere or some previous experience? Ensure your LinkedIn is up to date, because some recruiters just go and search using keywords. So ensure your LinkedIn is up to date. And then networking is really important. Join a tech community. We have quite a number of cybersecurity communities. I mentioned of SheHacks. We have besides, we have quite a number of communities. Join those communities and network, because you could attend a meetup and find your future employer there. So network, of course, be official at it while at it. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I think because we're almost running out of time, I was to talk a little bit about my career journey and Cybershuja having those who want to transition, because at some point I had to transition. While at campus, I knew I wanted to do cybersecurity, but unfortunately, my first job was not in cybersecurity. I did customer service for about 2 years. So I had to transition from customer service to cyber. Indeed, it was really quite challenging, very challenging, because you will do an interview and the recruiter is like, okay, you have the right education background, but then again, you don't have the experience. We're looking for someone who has at least worked in cyber. So that was quite a pretty challenge for me. That's why it took about 2 years for me to transition from customer service to my first cybersecurity job. So what I did was I took up volunteership roles. I took up volunteership roles to at least build on my experience. And also, it's important to have certifications, cybersecurity certifications. So if you have a few coins, you can sign up for CEH, you can sign up for the certifications around cloud, yeah. And then practice on platforms like Try Hack Me, Hack the Box, participate in CTFs, Udemy, just sharpen your skills. In as much as a recruiter will see this guy doesn't have experience, but at least they have these skills. So if we spend a few months training them, then they're good to go. And then it's good that you are in Cybershuja. It's a really good cybersecurity training program, because you're equipped with what the industry really requires. Again, networking is important. Was there a question? Okay, and networking is important. Join cybersecurity community and be active in it. Another important thing is have a mentor. Look for someone who's in cybersecurity, someone who's doing what you would like to do. Reach out to them, seek support. Then you will be guided. Yeah. Back to you, Hope.
Okay. So thank you, Tracy, for that. Before I conclude the session, are there any questions? Maybe some advice on gaining practical experience maybe sites or some way to get practical experience, even if someone has not gotten employment? How would they go about that?
Okay. You could use the platforms I mentioned earlier. I guess you guys use those platforms on Cybersecurity. The Try Hack Me and Hack the Box.
Yeah.
Yes, they really come in handy. Immersive labs for those who have student accounts. Yes, such platforms really come in handy.
Okay.
And also participating CTFs, because if you win a CTF, that puts your name out there. Okay. Yeah, I saw a hand.
Yeah, Harvey. Hello, Harvey. Your mic is unmuted, but we can't hear you.
Can you hear me right now?
Yes.
I wanted to inquire in case you've been participating in the CTFs. First of all, you've professionally equipped your LinkedIn to please or to be suitable to the employers. And secondly, you are not able, you've created a portfolio, but now you are not able to attach the boxes that you've attacked, and you've managed to hack the box in terms of now you've been very actively in the Pico CTF, Pico platform. Let's Defend or the Try Hack Me, and you've really actively done cleared all those rooms. So now you've been presented to an interview. So how will they be able to gauge now this person has done all this? Because apparently you cannot be able to highlight these things, or you cannot show them on your portfolio because you've already built a portfolio. The best that you can do is only present the projects that are on GitHub. So now how do you also incorporate all these rooms or all those things that you've done on these other platforms?
Okay, I think you have it. So how would you really showcase whatever you have learned in those CTFs that you have done? So remember, I mentioned like for our recruitment process, the first stage of the interview is a technical assessment, and it's normally in a CTF format. So if you've been doing well on these other platforms and then you're presented with a CTF by a recruiter, so then ideally you should emerge among the top. So that is one way. The other way, if that recruitment process doesn't have that technical assessment, during the interview, you could talk about the specific skills that you are able to learn from those challenges that you have done.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Harvey. I saw George's hand. George, are you still there?
Yes, I'm there.
Okay.
You're getting me?
Yes.
Okay, my question is, you have said that you are supposed to participate in CTF. So which platforms can we join so that we can be able to see these CTF competitions, or where can we get them so that we can be able to participate in such competitions? Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that, George. I think Harvey had mentioned quite a number when he was asking his question, so you could possibly benchmark with him. But then if you are in any cybersecurity community, I know quite a number post that. There are quite CTF teams in Kenya, actually. And then you could check on CTF Times. They normally post live CTFs as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So CTFC is one way that could help you in your cybersecurity, what would I say it? don't want to say job hunting. If you're trying to break into cybersecurity, but again, remember the other factors that I mentioned, because you'd find recruiters asking for certifications. For some, certifications is the evidence that you have the skill. So you will tell them, I have done the CTF, but then do you have a relevant certification in line with it? So if you have a few coins that you can spare, you can also do certifications around that. So I will share links of where you could get the CTFs with Hope. I hope you've noted the things that I want to share with you. Yes, Rashid.
Hello.
Yes.
I'm asking, how do you factor in the human component during threat modeling? In the sense that you previously said that human beings are the weakest link in cybersecurity.
Okay. So threat modeling, ideally, it's quite an imaginative process. You get to ask yourself what could possibly go wrong. So you could put yourself in the shoes of a user and try to ask yourself, how could this user be exploited? Okay. For an attacker to gain unauthorized access, such a scenario. And again, I mentioned you need to involve the rest of the project team. You'd find a project team has a product owner, they have a customer journey specialist who understands clearly how a user operates. So such people would also give you insights on the same. So threat modeling is not a one-man thing. It is a collaborative effort. Ensure you engage the rest of the project team to get insights from them on any other threat that you, as the cybersecurity person, couldn't have noticed.
Are you satisfied with the answer?
Oh yes, thank you. I'm satisfied.
Okay.
So Emmanuel, and then we'll take FMG, then William as the last person, kindly. Emmanuel, you can go ahead. Emmanuel, are you on the call? Okay, so FMG. Emmanuel, if you're having mic issues, kindly just write a message on the chat. FMG, you can go ahead.
Hi. You say that from experience you can either do the CTFs or get certifications. For certifications, are there any ones that you would recommend for someone who's trying to transition as a beginner?
Yes. CH, the Certified Ethical Hacker. You can check out that one for a beginner. I feel like it's normally beginner friendly. Also, CompTIA Security Plus, that's another beginner friendly certification. Yes, and I think Cisco also, they have some around network security. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Actually, I just had the exact same question. So thank you for that.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you. So we'll come to the end of our session now. Thank you, Tracy. You've really covered threat modeling, going even back to just explaining to us the difference between a threat, vulnerability, and a risk. Then where it lies in the software development cycle, and also the systematic approach in identifying all these threats. I think that was really good, the threat modeling process and all that, taking us through the different methodologies and even going into the STRIDE methodology. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you also for giving us a feel of where threat modeling lies in our careers or in what we're doing as cybersecurity professionals. Also, those who want to seek mentorship, I seek permission from Tracy to just tell them they can contact you via LinkedIn.
Yeah, sure. You can send a connection request on LinkedIn and a DM as well. Ensure to mention that you're from the Cyber Shuja program so that it's easier for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Tracy. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being part of the Cyber Shuja community. And thank you everyone for attending, and I hope you have a lovely night.